The bridge of the Valiant was quiet except for the soft beeping of monitors and the low hum of the ship's engines. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair, reading through routine reports. It was supposed to be another boring day on patrol. The deep space sector they were assigned to rarely saw any action. Most days they just watched empty space and counted the hours until their shift ended. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez was at her station, monitoring the communication channels. She was young, only 24, but she was good at her job. She wore her dark hair tied back in a neat bun, and her fingers moved quickly across her controls. She had been checking the usual frequencies when something strange appeared on her screen. "Captain, I'm picking up something odd," Amy said, her voice cutting through the quiet. "It's coming from the outer rim, frequency we don't normally monitor." Jake looked up from his reports. "What kind of signal?" "It's alien, sir. Definitely not human. And it sounds like a distress call." Amy pressed a few buttons trying to clean up the signal. "It's weak, but I think I can boost it." The bridge crew turned their attention to Amy's station. This was unusual. Humanity had only been talking to aliens for about 15 years. Most alien species kept their distance from humans. They found Earth people strange and a little bit scary. Humans came from what the aliens called a death world, a planet so dangerous that it created tough, aggressive creatures. "Put it through," Jake ordered, standing up from his chair. The speakers crackled to life. At first it was just static and strange sounds. Then Amy's computer started translating the message into English. The voice that came through sounded desperate and afraid. "This is the Velkin Confederacy sending emergency broadcast to all ships in range. We are under attack. The Krath Dominion has surrounded our home system. Our defense fleet is destroyed. Millions of civilians are trapped on 3 colony worlds. We have no way to fight back. Please, if anyone can hear this message, we need help. We are broadcasting on all channels. Please respond." The message repeated, several times, each time sounding more hopeless than the last. Jake felt a cold feeling in his chest. He had heard about the Velkin before. They were a peaceful group of 4 different alien species who traded and explored together. Their ships were fast but not built for fighting. They avoided conflicts whenever possible. "Where are they located?" Jake asked. Amy checked her screens. "The Velkin home system is about 3 weeks away at our maximum jump speed, sir." Commander Lisa Hayes stepped closer to Jake. She was his second in command, a tall woman with short blonde hair and sharp blue eyes. She had been in the military for 20 years and had seen plenty of action. "Sir, we should contact Earth Command. This is a big decision." Jake nodded. He knew she was right, but something in that distress call bothered him. The fear in the alien's voice was real. These people were dying and they had no one else to turn to. "Amy, try to send a response. Let them know we received their message," Jake said. "Lisa, get me a channel to Earth Command. I need to speak with Admiral Patterson right away." The next few minutes were busy. Amy sent messages back to the Velkin, though she wasn't sure if they would receive them in time. Lisa worked to establish a secure connection with Earth. The other crew members whispered among themselves, wondering what would happen next. Finally, the screen at the front of the bridge lit up. Admiral Greg Patterson appeared, sitting in his office back on Earth. He was an older man with gray hair and a stern face. He had been fighting wars since before Jake was born. "Captain Morrison, I received your initial report. Tell me about this distress signal," the Admiral said. Jake explained everything they had learned. He played the recording of the Velkin message and showed the Admiral the location of their system. "Sir, according to our database, the Krath Dominion is a military empire. They've been taking over systems for decades. The Velkin don't have the weapons or training to fight them." Admiral Patterson was quiet for a moment, thinking. "Captain, the Velkin are not our allies. We have no treaty with them. Earth Command has no legal obligation to respond." "I understand that, sir," Jake replied. "But they send a distress call. Where I come from, when someone calls for help, you answer." The Admiral's expression didn't change, but Jake thought he saw something in the old man's eyes. Respect, maybe, or memory of other battles and other calls for help. "How many ships do we have in that region?" the Admiral asked. "Just the Valiant, sir. But if we move fast, we could get there in 3 weeks." Admiral Patterson shook his head. One ship won't be enough against a Krath fleet. Give me 6 hours, Captain. Keep monitoring that signal. I need to talk to some people. The screen went dark. Jake turned to his crew. You heard the Admiral. We wait. Amy, keep that channel open. If the Velkin send any more messages, I want to hear them immediately. The hours that followed were tense. The crew tried to focus on their normal duties, but everyone kept glancing at the communication station. Amy played the distress signal several times, and each time it seemed more urgent. The Velkin were running out of time. Jake went to the ship's observation deck, a small room with a large window that looked out into space. He stood there alone, thinking about the decision he had made. He had told the Admiral they should help, but was it the right choice? Humanity was still new to the galaxy. They didn't have many friends out here. Was it smart to get involved in someone else's war? But then he thought about the message again. The fear. The desperation. If humans didn't help, who would? The galaxy was full of species, but most of them avoided conflict. They had evolved on easy worlds with mild weather and few predators. They didn't understand what it meant to fight for survival. Humans did. Earth had taught them well. Every generation had fought against something, whether it was wild animals, harsh weather, disease, or each other. Humans knew how to fight. More importantly, they knew why to fight. 6 hours later, Admiral Patterson called back. This time he was smiling. Captain Morrison, you're about to have company. I'm sending 11 more ships to join you. The fleet will arrive at your location in 12 hours. When they get there, you're all going to the Velkin system together. Jake felt relief wash over him. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me yet, Captain. You're going into a fight against an enemy that outnumbers you 4-1. The Krath have 40 warships in that system. We're sending 12. The Admiral paused. But if anyone can make this work, it's us. Earth didn't make us weak. Show those Krath what Deathworlders can do. The connection ended. Jake returned to the bridge and addressed his crew. Listen up, everyone. We have 11 ships coming to join us. In 12 hours, we're heading to the Velkin system. We're going to answer that distress call. Get this ship ready for combat. Check all weapons, reinforce the shields, and make sure our armor is at maximum strength. We're going to war. The crew responded with determination. They were scared, but they were also proud. Finally, they had a chance to prove what humanity could do. They would show the galaxy that when Deathworlders answered a call for help, they brought hope with them. And fire, lots of fire. The 12 ships of the United Earth Fleet hung in space like a pack of wolves waiting to hunt. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Valiant and watched as the other vessels took their positions. Each ship was different in size and design, but they all shared one thing in common. They were built by humans, and that meant they were built to survive. The largest ship in the fleet was the Horizon, a massive carrier that served as the command center. Admiral Greg Patterson was aboard, coordinating the entire operation. Next to the Horizon were the heavy cruisers Defiant and Resolute, both bristling with weapons and thick armor plating. There were also 6 destroyers, fast attack ships designed to hit hard and move quickly. The Valiant was a medium cruiser, balanced between speed and firepower. All ships reporting ready, sir, Commander Lisa Hayes said from her station. She had barely slept in the last 12 hours, making sure the Valiant was prepared for battle. Jake nodded. Open a channel to the fleet. A moment later, Admiral Patterson's face appeared on the main screen. The old admiral looked tired but determined. Behind him, the bridge of the Horizon was busy with activity. Officers moved between stations, checking readiness reports and coordinating with other ships. Captains, thank you for joining this mission on short notice, the admiral began. I won't lie to you. What we're about to do is dangerous. The Krath Dominion has 40 warships in the Velkin system. We have 12. By any military standard, those odds are terrible. Jake could see the faces of the other captains on split screens. Captain Ben Carter of the Resolute looked grim but ready. Captain Lauren Wells of the Defiant was checking data on a tablet. All of them understood what they were facing. But we have advantages, Admiral Patterson continued. First, we have surprise. The Krath don't expect anyone to answer the Velkin distress call. They think the galaxy is too afraid of them. Second, we have better training. Every person on these ships has been through Earth's military academies. We've studied warfare for thousands of years. The Krath rely on numbers and firepower. We rely on strategy and skill. The Admiral paused and his expression became harder. Third, and most important, we're from Earth. We're Deathworlders. Our planet tried to kill us every single day, and we survived. We evolved to fight. The Krath are about to learn what that means. A cheer went up from the various bridges. Jake felt pride swell in his chest. They were outnumbered, but they weren't outmatched. Not where it counted. We jumped to the Velkin system in 1 hour, the Admiral said. All ships, final preparations. And remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for people who can't fight back. That's what makes us different from the Krath. We protect the weak. We answer distress calls. That's what heroes do. The transmission ended. Jake turned to his crew. You heard the Admiral, 1 hour. Lisa, I want a full status report. Amy, keep monitoring the Velkin channels. Let me know if anything changes. The next hour passed quickly. The crew of the Valiant worked with focused intensity. Engineers checked every system twice. Weapons officers calibrated their targeting computers. Medical staff prepared the infirmary for casualties. Everyone knew their job and did it well. Jake walked through the ship talking to his crew. He visited the engine room where Chief Engineer Danny Cooper was making final adjustments to the jump drive. Danny was a big man with oil-stained hands and a friendly smile. How's she looking, Danny? Jake asked. Perfect, Captain. This girl will get us there and back, no problem. Danny patted the engine housing like it was a beloved pet. I've been working on ships for 15 years. This is the best one I've ever seen. In the weapons bay, Lieutenant Kevin Price was supervising the loading of missiles. Kevin was young, only 26, but he was the best weapons officer Jake had ever worked with. He could hit a target the size of a baseball from 5,000 kilometers away. We ready, Kevin? Jake asked. Yes, sir. All missile tubes loaded. Railguns charged. Point defense systems online. If the Krath want to fight, we'll give them one they won't forget. Jake made his way to the pilot's cabin where Lieutenant Chris Murphy was running flight simulations. Chris was one of the fighter pilots assigned to the Valiant. He would be launching in a small attack craft during the battle. Fighter pilots were a special breed, crazy enough to fly tiny ships into the middle of massive space battles. Nervous? Jake asked. Chris grinned. Always am before a fight, sir. But I've been training for this my whole life. My dad was a pilot. His dad was a pilot. We're good at this. Finally, Jake returned to the bridge. The countdown showed 10 minutes until jump. The crew was at their stations, focused and ready. Jake sat in his command chair and took a deep breath. This was it. In 10 minutes, they would jump into a system where they were outnumbered 4-1. Some of them might not come back. Captain, incoming transmission from the Velkin, Amy said suddenly. Put it through. The alien voice came through the speakers, translated by the computer. This time it was different. Instead of the distress call, it was a direct message to the human fleet. Human ships, this is Velkin Command. We have detected your fleet approaching our system. We cannot believe you are coming to help us. We have no alliance with Earth. We cannot offer you payment. Why are you doing this? Jake picked up the communication handset. Velkin Command, this is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earthship Valiant. We're coming because you asked for help. That's reason enough. There was a long pause. Then the Velkin voice came back, thick with emotion. We do not understand your kind, humans, but we are grateful. Please be careful. The Krath fleet is very strong. We'll handle the Krath, Jake said. Just stay safe down there. We're on our way. The countdown reached 0. Admiral Patterson's voice came over the fleet-wide channel. All ships jump in 3, 2, 1, execute. The universe twisted around them. Jake felt the strange sensation of faster-than-light travel, like being pulled in every direction at once. The stars outside the window became streaks of light, then disappeared completely. They were in jump space, traveling between dimensions to cross the vast distance in minutes instead of weeks. The journey took exactly 17 minutes. When they emerged from jump space, they were at the edge of the Velkin system. The main screen lit up immediately with sensor data. There was the Velkin sun, a yellow star similar to Earth's sun. 3 planets showed on the display, each one inhabited by millions of aliens who were waiting to see if they would live or die. And surrounding those planets were the Krath ships, 40 large warships in a blockade formation, plus dozens of smaller support vessels. They controlled all the jump points and held orbital space around each planet. It was a textbook military blockade designed to crush any resistance. My God, Lisa whispered. There are so many of them. Sensor readings coming in, Amy reported. The Krath ships are approximately the same size as ours. Their technology appears similar to human standards. They have energy shields and plasma weapons. Jake studied the formation. The Krath had positioned their ships to cover all angles of approach. They weren't expecting an attack, but their formation was strong enough to handle one if it came. They were professionals, not amateurs. Fleet-wide channel, Jake ordered. Admiral Patterson's face appeared on the screen. Well, there they are. Exactly where intelligence said they would be. All ships move to attack formation Alpha. We're going straight at them. Captain Lauren Wells spoke up from the Defiant. Sir, shouldn't we use a more tactical approach? We're outnumbered. That's exactly why we go straight at them, the Admiral replied. They expect us to be cautious. They expect us to be scared. But we're from Earth, we don't scare easy. We're going to hit them so hard and so fast that they won't have time to organize a proper response. Jake felt a wild smile cross his face. It was a crazy plan, but crazy plans often worked when no one expected them. All crew battle stations. This is not a drill. We are going into combat. Everyone knows their job. Do it well and we'll all go home. Earth expects us to win, so let's win. The 12 human ships accelerated toward the Krath fleet, engines burning at maximum power. In the distance, the Krath sensors began to register their approach. Warning alarms started sounding on 40 enemy ships. The Krath commander looked at his screens in confusion, trying to understand what was happening. 12 ships were attacking his fleet of 40. It made no sense. Who would be that stupid? Then he read the identification codes and understood. Humans, Deathworlders, the crazy ones from the dangerous planet. He smiled. This would be easier than he thought. He gave the order to attack. His 40 ships moved into combat formation, weapons powering up, shields strengthening. They would crush these humans quickly and then return to bombarding the Vulcan planets. But as the two fleets closed the distance, the Krath commander felt something he hadn't felt in years. A small whisper of doubt. The human ships weren't slowing down. They weren't showing any fear. They were coming straight at him like hunters who had found their prey. The battle was about to begin. The first shots of the battle lit up the darkness of space like lightning in a storm. The Krath fleet opened fire when the human ships came within range, sending hundreds of plasma bolts streaking across the void. The bright blue energy weapons looked beautiful and deadly as they crossed the distance between the two fleets. On the bridge of the Valiant, Jake watched the incoming fire on his tactical display. Evasive maneuvers. Don't make it easy for them. The ship tilted hard to the left, engines burning at full power. Around them, the other human ships were doing the same thing, breaking formation and spreading out. The Krath plasma bolts passed through empty space where the human ships had been seconds before. They're not used to ships that move this fast, Lisa observed, gripping her console as the Valiant spun and rolled. Their targeting computers can't keep up. Jake nodded. It made sense. Most alien species built their ships for efficiency and comfort. Human ships were built for war. They could pull maneuvers that would tear apart vessels designed on gentler worlds. The gravity forces inside the Valiant would have killed most aliens, but humans had evolved on a planet with strong gravity. They could handle it. In range, sir, Lieutenant Kevin Price reported from the weapons station, requesting permission to fire. All weapons open fire, Jake commanded. The Valiant's railguns spoke first. These were magnetic accelerators that fired solid metal slugs at incredible speeds. The projectiles were simple, just chunks of dense metal, but they hit with devastating force. When a railgun slug struck a target, it delivered all its kinetic energy in an instant, punching through shields and armor like a hammer through glass. The first volley struck a Krath cruiser on its port side. The enemy shields flared bright red and then collapsed. The slugs continued through the hull, tearing through decks and systems. Atmosphere vented from the wounds, freezing instantly in the cold of space. The Krath ship began to spin out of control. Direct hit, Kevin reported with satisfaction. Target is disabled. Around the Valiant, the other human ships were firing as well. The space between the two fleets became a storm of weapons fire. Plasma bolts, missiles, railgun slugs, and laser beams crossed paths in a deadly dance. The Krath had numbers, but the humans had accuracy. Every shot counted. Captain Ben Carter's voice came over the fleet channel from the Resolute. Taking heavy fire on our starboard side. Shields at 60%. Defiant moving to support, Captain Lauren Wells responded. Her ship accelerated toward the Resolute, adding its firepower to drive back the Krath ships attacking Carter's vessel. Admiral Patterson coordinated the battle from the horizon, his calm voice cutting through the chaos. All ships concentrate fire on their command vessels. If we take out their leaders, the rest will break formation. Jake marked 3 large Krath warships on his tactical display. They were bigger than the others and positioned at the center of the enemy formation. Those would be the command ships where the Krath admirals were directing the battle. Kevin, target that big ship at bearing 270. Hit it with everything we have. Yes, sir. Locking missiles. The Valiant's missile tubes opened, releasing a swarm of smart munitions. These weren't simple rockets. They were guided weapons with their own small computers, able to adjust course and avoid enemy fire. 20 missiles streaked toward the Krath command ship, weaving and dodging as the enemy point defense systems tried to shoot them down. Most of the missiles were destroyed, exploding in bright flashes as the Krath lasers found them. But 6 made it through. They struck the command ship in rapid succession, each explosion weakening the shields further. The final missile punched through and detonated against the hull, blowing a massive hole in the ship's side. Confirmed kill, Amy reported. That command ship is dead in space. But the victory came at a cost. The Krath were learning to predict human movements. Their formation was adjusting, ships moving to support each other and create crossfire zones. A group of 5 Krath destroyers focused their fire on the human destroyer Lightning, hammering its shields with concentrated plasma fire. Lightning is in trouble, Lisa said urgently. Shields are failing. Jake made a quick decision. Helm, bring us around. We're going to help them. The Valiant turned hard, accelerating toward the Lightning. As they moved, Jake ordered all weapons to fire on the Krath destroyers attacking the smaller human ship. The railguns roared again, and this time they were joined by the Valiant's laser batteries. Beams of focused light crossed the distance in an instant, slicing into the Krath ships. The enemy destroyers broke off their attack, turning to face this new threat. But they had made a mistake by bunching together. Jake saw the opportunity immediately. Kevin, fire spread pattern. Catch all 5 of them. Kevin's fingers flew over his controls. The Valiant's remaining missiles launched, programmed to spread out and hit multiple targets. The Krath destroyers tried to evade, but there were too many missiles coming from too many angles. Explosions rippled through their formation, destroying 2 ships and crippling a third. The Lightning limped away from the fight, trailing atmosphere and debris. It was badly damaged but still alive. Captain Steve Palmer's voice came over the channel, strained but grateful. Thanks for the save, Valiant. We owe you one. Stay alive long enough to pay me back, Jake replied. The battle had been raging for 2 hours now, and both sides had taken losses. The humans had lost 1 destroyer completely, the Thunder, which had been caught in a crossfire and overwhelmed. 2 other human ships were badly damaged and had withdrawn to the edge of the battle. But the Krath had lost 12 ships, almost a quarter of their fleet, and several more were disabled or running. The difference was becoming clear. The Krath had better numbers and their weapons were just as powerful as the human weapons. But human ships were tougher. They could take more damage and keep fighting. Human armor was layered and redundant, designed by engineers who understood that in war things break. The key was to keep functioning even when broken, and human tactics were better. The Krath fought like they always fought, with standard formations and predictable strategies. Humans fought like wolves, working together to separate targets and bring them down. They used every advantage, every trick they had learned from thousands of years of warfare on Earth. Commander Thexvar, the Krath fleet commander, watched the battle from his flagship and felt growing frustration. This wasn't going according to plan. His fleet should have crushed these humans in the first hour. Instead, he was losing ships at an alarming rate. These Deathworlders fought with a ferocity he had never encountered. All ships tighten formation, he ordered. Don't let them isolate individual vessels. We win through superior numbers. The Krath fleet pulled closer together, creating a dense formation bristling with weapons. It was a defensive posture, designed to prevent the humans from picking off ships one at a time. Thexvar hoped it would work. Admiral Patterson saw the change in the enemy formation and smiled. The Krath commander was smart, but he was thinking defensively now. That meant he was worried. Time to increase the pressure. All ships prepare for Alpha Strike, the Admiral ordered. Concentrate all firepower on a single point in their formation. We're going to punch right through them. The human ships regrouped, forming a spearhead formation with the heavy cruisers at the front. They accelerated directly toward the center of the Krath fleet, all weapons ready. It was a bold move, almost reckless. They would be surrounded by enemies taking fire from all sides. But if they could break through the formation, they would split the Krath fleet in half. Shields to maximum, Jake ordered. All power to forward deflectors. We're going through them, not around them. The Valiant took its position in the formation, flanking the Resolute. Around them, the other human ships locked into place. They looked like an arrow aimed at the heart of the enemy fleet. All ships execute, Admiral Patterson commanded. The human fleet surged forward as one, engines burning white-hot with maximum thrust. The Krath opened fire with everything they had, knowing they couldn't let the humans break their formation. Plasma fire, missiles, and laser beams filled the space between the fleets. The human shields lit up like suns as they absorbed the punishment, the energy barriers flickering and straining under the assault. The Valiant shook violently as plasma bolts slammed into its shields. Warning alarms blared across the bridge. Damage reports scrolled across Jake's screen, showing systems failing and armor taking hits. But the ship held together, its thick hull absorbing what the shields couldn't stop. Shields at 40%, Lisa shouted over the noise. Hull breaches on decks 4 and 7. Seal those sections, Jake ordered. Keep us moving forward. The human formation drove into the Krath fleet like a spear into flesh. At point-blank range, every weapon fired. Railguns hammered enemy ships. Missiles detonated against hulls. Laser batteries carved through armor. The humans were trading damage for damage, willing to take hits in order to deliver killing blows. A Krath cruiser exploded off the Valiant's starboard side, its reactor going critical. The shockwave buffeted the human ship, but they pushed through. Another enemy vessel tried to ram them, but Jake's pilot twisted the ship at the last second, letting the Krath ship pass by close enough to scrape armor, and then they were through. The human fleet burst out. The battle entered its 4th hour, and the space around the Velkin worlds had become a graveyard. Debris from destroyed ships floated everywhere, creating hazards for the surviving vessels. Frozen atmosphere, twisted metal, and the bodies of those who hadn't made it to escape pods drifted in the silent void. On the surface of Velkin Prime, millions of aliens watched the battle through their orbital monitors. They had lived in fear for days, watching the Krath fleet rain destruction on their orbital stations and slowly tighten the blockade. They had broadcast their distress call hoping anyone would hear, but they never expected anyone to actually come. Now they watched in awe as the human ships fought against impossible odds. The small fleet from Earth had already destroyed 15 Krath vessels and damaged many more. But the cost was visible. 2 human ships were gone completely, vaporized in the fighting. 3 more had withdrawn, too damaged to continue. That left only 7 human ships still in the fight. Elder Soren, the leader of the Velkin Council, stood in the command center watching the displays. He was an old being, his skin pale blue and his 3 eyes filled with tears. "Why are they doing this?" he asked quietly. "They do not know us. We cannot pay them. Why would they sacrifice themselves for strangers?" His aide, a younger Velkin named Kira, shook her head. "I have been studying human culture since they arrived in our galaxy. They are different from us, Elder. They come from a world that tried to kill them every day. On Earth, they had to deal with predators, diseases, natural disasters, and even fought wars against each other. They learned that survival means helping each other. When someone sends a distress call, humans answer. It is who they are." Soren looked back at the display, watching a human ship take damage while protecting a disabled sister ship. "Then they are the bravest species we have ever encountered. Or the craziest. Perhaps both." Back in space, Jake Morrison was dealing with reality of prolonged combat. The Valiant had taken significant damage. Their shields were down to 20%. They had hull breaches on 5 different decks. The medical bay was full of wounded crew members. But the ship was still fighting, still firing its weapons at every Krath vessel that came within range. "Captain, we're getting low on missiles," Kevin reported. "We've expended 70% of our ammunition." Jake nodded grimly. "Switch to railguns and lasers. Make every shot count." Commander Lisa Hayes was coordinating damage control teams throughout the ship. Engineering reports the port engine is running at 60% efficiency. We've lost 2 of our point defense batteries, and environmental systems are failing on Deck 7. Seal Deck 7 and evacuate anyone still there, Jake ordered. "Danny, I need that engine back at full power." Chief Engineer Danny Cooper's voice came through the intercom from the engine room. "Working on it, Captain. Give me 10 minutes. Just keep the Krath from shooting at my engines." "I'll do my best," Jake replied with a tired smile. The Krath fleet was in even worse shape. They had lost nearly half their ships, and the survivors were battered and scattered. Commander Thexvar had tried multiple tactics to overwhelm the humans, but nothing worked. The Deathworlders adapted to every strategy, finding ways to turn his own numbers against him. Now Thexvar faced a difficult decision. He could continue fighting and likely lose his entire fleet, or he could retreat and admit defeat. The Krath Dominion did not accept failure easily. If he retreated, his career was over. He might even face execution for cowardice. But if he stayed, he would die here along with all his warriors. And for what? A system that held no strategic value? 3 planets full of weak aliens who couldn't even defend themselves. Was it worth sacrificing everything? Thexvar looked at his tactical display one more time. 7 human ships remained combat effective. He still had 23 ships. The numbers said he should win. But numbers didn't account for the fighting spirit he saw in these humans. They fought like they had nothing to lose and everything to gain. "All ships prepare to retreat," Thexvar ordered quietly. His bridge crew looked at him in shock, but he raised a hand to silence their protests. "We cannot win this battle. These humans will fight until every one of their ships is destroyed, and they will take most of us with them. I will not waste our lives for pride. Prepare for emergency jump. We leave in 5 minutes." Admiral Patterson saw the change in the Krath formation almost immediately. The enemy ships were pulling back, consolidating into a retreat formation. "They're running," he announced over the fleet channel. "All ships pursue. Don't let them regroup." The surviving human ships accelerated after the Krath fleet still firing. Jake pushed the Valiant as hard as it would go, even though every system on the ship was stressed to the breaking point. They had come too far and lost too much to let the Krath escape cleanly. "Target their engines," Jake ordered. "Disable as many as we can before they jump away." Kevin focused the Valiant's railguns on the engines of the nearest Krath cruiser. The heavy slugs tore through the ship's rear section, destroying the jump drive in a series of small explosions. The Krath vessel went dark, drifting helplessly as its crew frantically tried to restore power. Around the battlefield, similar scenes played out. The human ships picked off stragglers and damaged ships, making sure the Krath paid the maximum price for their retreat. It was brutal but necessary. Every ship they destroyed here was one less that would threaten someone else later. Lieutenant Chris Murphy launched from the Valiant in his fighter, leading a squadron of attack craft in pursuit of the fleeing Krath. The small, nimble fighters darted between the larger ships, targeting engines and weapon systems. Chris had always loved flying, ever since he was a kid watching his father pilot atmospheric craft on Earth. Now he was hunting enemy warships in deep space, and he was good at it. Blue leader to all fighters. "Focus on that damaged cruiser at heading 315, Chris ordered over the squadron channel. "Let's make sure it doesn't go anywhere." The fighters swarmed the Krath cruiser like angry insects, their lighter weapons chipping away at its damaged shields. The enemy ship tried to fight back, its point defense systems tracking the fast-moving targets. 2 fighters were hit, spinning out of control, but the rest pressed the attack, and finally the cruiser's shields collapsed completely. "Valiant target is open," Chris reported. Requesting heavy fire, Jake didn't hesitate. "Kevin, give them what they want!" A final railgun volley tore through the unshielded Krath cruiser, ripping it apart. The ship broke into 3 large pieces, its reactor exploding in a brilliant flash. Chris pulled his fighter into a tight turn, avoiding the debris field by meters. "Splash 1 cruiser," he reported calmly, though his hands were shaking from adrenaline. But then the Krath made their final play. Commander Thexvar, seeing that escape was becoming impossible, decided to take as many humans with him as he could. His flagship was badly damaged but still functional. He ordered it to turn directly toward the human carrier Horizon, where Admiral Patterson coordinated the battle. "All weapons, fire on that carrier," Thexvar commanded. "Kill their admiral, and maybe this will mean something." The Krath flagship opened fire with everything it had remaining. Plasma bolts and missiles streaked toward the Horizon. The carrier's shields absorbed the first volley, but they were already weakened from hours of fighting. The second volley broke through and explosions rippled across the Horizon's hull. "Horizon is taking heavy damage," Amy reported, her voice filled with alarm. "They're losing atmosphere on multiple decks." Admiral Patterson's voice came over the fleet channel, steady despite the chaos around him. All ships continue pursuit of the main Krath fleet. Defiant, take tactical command. I'll handle this flagship, Captain Lauren Wells protested. Sir, your ship is badly damaged. Let us help. Negative, Defiant. The rest of the Krath are jumping away. Don't let them escape. That's an order. The Admiral cut the channel before Wells could argue further. Jake watched on his tactical display as the horizon turned to face the Krath flagship. The two massive ships closed on each other, both battered and bleeding atmosphere. It would be a duel at point-blank range, the kind of fight where neither ship was likely to survive. Captain, we should help the Admiral, Lisa said urgently. Jake was torn. Patterson had ordered them to pursue the fleeing Krath ships. But watching the horizon fight alone seemed wrong. That was their commander, their leader. Humans didn't abandon their own. He made his decision. Helm, new heading. Take us to the horizon. Full speed. Sir, the Admiral ordered us to pursue, Lisa reminded him. I know what he ordered, Jake replied. But he's one of us. We don't leave our people behind. Not ever. The Valiant broke formation and accelerated toward the two flagships. Around them, 3 other human ships did the same thing. Captain Ben Carter in the Resolute, and the destroyers Swift and Ranger. They had all made the same choice Jake made. Orders were important, but loyalty was more important. The 4 ships hit the Krath flagship from 4 different angles, overwhelming its damaged defenses. Railgun fire, lasers, and the last of their missiles struck the enemy vessel in a concentrated barrage. The Krath shields collapsed in seconds, and the hull began to tear apart under the assault. Commander Thexvar felt his ship dying around him. Explosions rocked the bridge. Systems failed one after another. The silence after the battle was almost painful. For hours, the space around the Vulcan worlds had been filled with weapons fire, explosions, and the chaos of combat. Now there was only the quiet hum of damaged ships and the soft beeping of sensors, scanning for threats that were no longer there. Jake Morrison sat in his command chair on the bridge of the Valiant, staring at the tactical display. It showed the positions of the surviving ships, both human and the wreckage of the Krath fleet. They had won, but the cost had been terrible. 2 human ships were completely destroyed. 4 more were so badly damaged they could barely move. Every surviving ship had casualties. Damage report, Jake said quietly. Commander Lisa Hayes had been coordinating with the repair teams. Her uniform was stained with oil and blood from helping injured crew members. We have hull breaches on 7 decks. Port engine is offline. We've lost 40% of our weapon systems. Shields are at minimum power, and we have 37 crew members in medical, 12 of them critical. Jake closed his eyes for a moment. 37 wounded. On a crew of 200, that was a significant number. And he knew some of those 12 critical cases might not survive. Any fatalities? 6 confirmed dead, Captain. Chief Murphy in engineering, 3 weapons technicians, and 2 medical staff who were killed when a plasma bolt breached the infirmary. Among the dead was Danny Cooper's assistant, a young engineer named Pete Johnson who had just turned 23. Jake had spoken to him 2 days ago. Pete had been excited about the mission, proud to be part of something important. Now he was gone, another name to add to the memorial wall. Understood, Jake said, his voice heavy. Make sure their families are notified. And start repair priorities. I want engines and shields back online first. Admiral Patterson's voice came over the fleet channel. The old admiral sounded tired but steady. All ships report status. One by one, the captains reported in. The news was grim. The Horizon had taken severe damage and lost its jump drive completely. The Resolute was in slightly better shape but had lost a third of its crew. The destroyers Swift and Ranger were functional, but needed extensive repairs. Captain Lauren Wells in the Defiant reported that her ship was the least damaged and could still fight if needed. Total casualties across the fleet are 214 dead, 356 wounded, the Admiral said, his voice filled with sorrow. We also lost the Thunder and the Storm completely. Those were good ships with good crews. We'll honor their sacrifice. Jake felt the weight of those numbers. More than 500 casualties from a fleet of less than 3,000. Nearly 1 in 6 of the people who had come to help the Vulcan would never go home. It was a heavy price for answering a distress call, but then Amy spoke up from the communications station. Captain, I'm receiving messages from the Vulcan worlds. They want to speak with the fleet commander. Admiral Patterson's image appeared on the main screen. Put them through, Lieutenant. The screen split to show Elder Soren, the leader of the Velkin Council. The old alien's 3 eyes were wet with tears and his pale blue skin seemed to glow with emotion. Behind him, thousands of other Velkin were gathered, all of them watching the transmission. Admiral Patterson of Earth, Soren began, his translated voice shaking. We have no words sufficient to express our gratitude. You came when no one else would. You fought for us when you had no obligation to do so. You sacrificed your people to save ours. He paused, struggling with emotion. Why, we must know. Why did you do this? The Admiral was quiet for a moment, thinking about how to answer. Then he spoke, and his words were simple but powerful. Because you asked for help. Because it was the right thing to do. Where we come from. When someone is in trouble, you help them. It doesn't matter if they're friends or strangers. It doesn't matter what it costs. You help because that's what decent people do. Soren bowed his head, a gesture of deep respect in Velkin culture. The humans of Earth are unlike any species we have known. You are strong, yes. Your ships are powerful and your warriors are skilled. But more than that, you are good. You have shown us what true courage means. It is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite fear. You were afraid, we could see it. Yet you came anyway. Admiral Patterson nodded slowly. We were afraid. Fear is natural. But we learned long ago that some things are worth being afraid for. Freedom is one. Justice is another. And the lives of innocent people are definitely worth it. The transmission from the Velkin world showed scenes of celebration. Cities that had been dark with fear were now lit up with joy. Millions of aliens who had thought they were going to die were now alive because 12 human ships had answered their call. Children played in streets that had been empty. Families reunited after hiding in shelters for days. We wish to help with repairs, Soren offered. Our shipyards survived the attack. They are not as advanced as human facilities, but our engineers will work alongside yours. We will provide whatever resources you need. Food, medical supplies, raw materials for repairs. It is the least we can do. We appreciate that, Elder Soren, the Admiral replied. We'll send you a list of what we need. But right now my people need rest. It's been a long day. The transmission ended. Jake stood up from his command chair, his body aching from hours of sitting through combat. Lisa, you have the bridge. I'm going to medical to check on our wounded. The walk through the Valiant was sobering. Everywhere Jake looked, he saw damage. Walls were scorched from electrical fires. Deck plates were warped from heat. Some corridors were sealed off completely where hull breaches had occurred. Repair teams worked frantically, welding patches and rerouting systems around damaged sections. The medical bay was crowded and chaotic. Dr. Karen Phillips was moving between patients, her staff working to save lives and ease pain. Karen was a small woman with sharp eyes and steady hands. She had been a trauma surgeon on Earth before joining the space fleet, and her skills were being tested now. How are they doing? Jake asked quietly. Karen didn't look up from the patient she was treating, a young navigation officer with severe burns. Most will survive. The worst cases we've put in stasis pods until we can get them to a proper hospital, but we lost 2 more in the last hour. Their injuries were just too severe. Jake moved through the medical bay, stopping to talk to the wounded crew members who were conscious. He thanked them for their service, assured them they would be taken care of, and listened to their stories. It was the least he could do as their captain. Lieutenant Chris Murphy was there, his left arm in a cast. His fighter had been hit during the final moments of battle, and he had barely made it back to the Valiant before losing consciousness from blood loss. But he was smiling when Jake approached his bed. We got them, Captain, Chris said proudly. Sent those Krath running with their tails between their legs. That we did, Jake agreed. How's the arm? Doc says I'll be flying again in a few weeks. Can't keep a Murphy out of the cockpit for long. Chris's smile faded a bit. I lost 3 pilots from my squadron. Good people. They deserved better than dying out here. Jake put a hand on the young pilot's shoulder. They died doing something important. They saved millions of lives today. That's not a small thing. Over the next few days, the human fleet slowly recovered. Velkin engineers came aboard the ships with materials and expertise. They were amazed by human technology, especially the heavy armor and redundant systems that had kept the ships fighting despite terrible damage. Human ships were overbuilt compared to most alien vessels, designed with the assumption that things would break and burn and tear apart. The key was to keep fighting even when broken. The Velkin were also amazed by human medical technology. Dr. Karen Phillips worked with Vulcan doctors to treat the wounded, and they learned from each other. Vulcan medicine was more advanced in some areas, particularly in treating diseases and genetic disorders, but human trauma medicine was far superior, developed through centuries of wars and disasters. Captain Lauren Wells led a team to the surface of Vulcan Prime, where she met with the planetary government. The Vulcan wanted to establish formal relations with Earth, to create an alliance that would benefit both species. Wells was a skilled diplomat in addition to being a good ship captain, and she negotiated the basics of what would become a lasting friendship between two very different peoples. Jake spent time writing letters to the families of the crew members who had died. It was the hardest part of being a captain, telling parents and spouses and children that their loved ones were gone. He tried to make each letter personal, sharing memories and explaining how their sacrifice had made a difference. It felt inadequate, but it was all he could do. On the 5th day after the battle, the fleet held a memorial service. The 7 surviving ships formed up in orbit around Vulcan Prime, and every crew member who could be spared attended. Admiral Patterson gave a speech honoring the dead, reading each name aloud and sharing their stories. "We came to this system as strangers," the Admiral said. "We leave as heroes and friends. But the real heroes are those who won't be going home with us. They gave their lives so that others could live. That is the highest form of courage. That is what it means to be human." The service ended with a traditional Earth military farewell. The ships fired. 3 weeks had passed since the battle, and the human fleet was finally ready to return home. The ships had been patched and repaired as much as possible in the Vulcan shipyards. They would need more extensive work when they reached Earth, but they were jump-capable, and that was what mattered. Jake Morrison walked through the Valiant one last time before departure, inspecting the repairs and checking on his crew. The ship would never be quite the same. There were scars that couldn't be fully erased, damage that ran too deep to completely fix with the resources available. But she was still flying, still capable of protecting those who needed protection. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Danny Cooper was supervising the final checks on the repaired jump drive. Danny had worked almost nonstop for 3 weeks, barely sleeping, determined to get his ship ready for the journey home. His assistant Pete Johnson was gone, killed in the battle, and Danny felt that loss deeply. But he kept working because that's what engineers did. They fixed things. They made broken things whole again. "How's she looking, Danny?" Jake asked. The big engineer smiled, though his eyes were tired. "Good as new, Captain." "Well, maybe not new, but she'll get us home. That's a promise." "Pete would be proud of the work you've done," Jake said quietly. Danny's smile faded a bit. "Kid was good. Really good. He would have been a great engineer someday." He paused, wiping his hands on a cloth. "You know what keeps me going, Captain? Knowing that Pete died for something that mattered. We saved millions of lives. That's not nothing." "No," Jake agreed. "That's definitely not nothing." On the bridge, Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez was saying goodbye to some Vulcan communication technicians who had helped her repair the ship's systems. The aliens were fascinated by human technology, and Amy had enjoyed teaching them. They had taught her things too, about their own culture and language. She had made friends here, real friends, despite the language barriers and the differences between their species. "Will you come back to visit?" one of the Vulcan asked through a translator. Amy smiled. "I hope so. You've been wonderful hosts, and I want to see how you're doing in a few years, once you've rebuilt everything the Krath damaged." "We will rebuild quickly," the Vulcan assured her, "and we will remember." When the humans needed help, the Vulcan answered that distress call. "It is a debt we can never fully repay, but we will try." Commander Lisa Hayes was in her quarters packing her personal belongings. She had kept a journal during the mission, writing down her thoughts and feelings about the battle and its aftermath. It had helped her process the trauma of combat and the loss of so many crew members. She planned to publish it when she got home so people on Earth would understand what had happened here. There was a knock on her door. "Come in," she called. Lieutenant Kevin Price entered, looking nervous. The young weapons officer had performed brilliantly during the battle, but he was struggling with guilt over the people he had killed. Each enemy ship destroyed meant hundreds of alien lives ended by his targeting decisions. "Commander, do you have a minute?" Kevin asked. "Of course. Sit down." Lisa gestured to a chair. Kevin sat but seemed uncomfortable. "I wanted to ask you something. How do you deal with it?" The killing, I mean. I know they were enemies. I know they were bad people doing bad things. But I still killed them. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. Lisa had expected this conversation. Many young soldiers struggled with the reality of combat. It never gets easy, Kevin. Anyone who says it does is either lying or broken inside. You should feel something when you take a life. Even an enemy's life. That's what makes us human. But how do I live with it? Kevin asked. You remember why you did it, Lisa said firmly. You killed those craft to save the Vulcan. Every enemy ship you destroyed was one less ship bombarding civilian populations. You made hard choices in impossible situations, and you saved lives by doing so. That doesn't erase what you did, but it gives it meaning. Kevin nodded slowly. Thank you, Commander. That helps. After he left, Lisa returned to her packing. She understood Kevin's struggle because she felt it too. Leadership meant making decisions that got people killed, both enemies and sometimes your own people. You carried those deaths with you forever. The key was to make sure they meant something. Admiral Patterson was on the horizon, preparing for the departure ceremony. The Vulcan government had organized a massive event to honor the human fleet before they left. Millions of aliens had gathered in the capital city, and the ceremony would be broadcast across all 3 Vulcan worlds. The Admiral had been asked to give a speech, and he had spent hours writing and rewriting it. Captain Lauren Wells came to his ready room to review the speech. She had become his informal advisor on Vulcan culture and protocols during their time here. How's it coming, Admiral? I keep trying to find the right words, Patterson admitted. These people want to thank us, to honor us. But I keep thinking about the cost. 2 ships lost, 500 casualties. Was it worth it? Wells sat down across from him. Sir, you know it was. Look out your window. See those cities? They're alive because we came. Those millions of people going about their lives, raising their children, pursuing their dreams. They exist because we answered a distress call. I know, the Admiral said, but tell that to the families of the people who died. Those families already know, Wells said gently. I've read the messages from Earth. The families of the fallen are proud. Their loved ones died as heroes, saving innocent lives. That's a legacy worth having. The departure ceremony began at noon, Vulcan time. The 7 surviving ships of the human fleet took positions in orbit, while the ceremony proceeded on the surface. Elder Soren spoke first. His words carried to the ships and broadcast across the system. People of the Vulcan Confederacy, Soren began. We gather today to honor the bravest beings we have ever known. When we sent our distress call, we did not truly believe anyone would answer. The galaxy is large and cold, and most species think only of themselves. We expected to die alone and forgotten. The elder paused, his 3 eyes shining with emotion. But the humans heard us. From their distant world, they heard our cry for help. And they came. 12 ships against 40. They knew the odds. They knew many of them would die. Yet they came anyway because that is who they are. The cameras showed scenes from the battle, footage that the Vulcan had recorded from their orbital stations. It showed human ships taking terrible damage but continuing to fight. It showed fighters weaving through enemy fire to protect Vulcan cities. It showed the horizon, badly damaged and bleeding atmosphere, still firing its weapons at the Krath flagship. We lost no cities because the humans stopped the bombardment. Soren continued. We lost no worlds because the humans drove away the invaders. We lost no hope because the humans showed us that good still exists in this galaxy. They showed us that courage and compassion are not weakness, but the greatest strengths any species can possess. The elder looked directly at the camera, speaking to the human fleet in orbit. Admiral Patterson, Captain Morrison, Captain Wells, Captain Carter, and all the brave humans who fought for us. You came from a world that tried to kill you every day. Your planet made you strong through suffering, but it also made you kind through understanding of what it means to struggle and suffer. You are Deathworlders, yes, but you are also the greatest hope for peace and justice in this galaxy. Admiral Patterson stood to give his response. He had ultimately decided to keep his speech simple and from the heart. Elder Soren, people of the Vulcan Confederacy, the Admiral began. You honor us with your words and your gratitude. But we did only what was right. When someone needs help, you help them. It's that simple. We didn't come here expecting thanks or rewards. We came because you asked, and because we could make a difference. He looked at the other ships in the fleet, thinking of the people aboard them. We paid a heavy price for this victory. Good people died here. people with families and friends and dreams. They gave their lives for a cause that was just and necessary. We will honor their memory by continuing to answer distress calls, by continuing to stand against tyranny and oppression wherever we find it. The Admiral's voice became stronger. Some species in this galaxy think humanity is dangerous. They call us Deathworlders and fear our potential for violence. They're right to recognize our capabilities. We are very good at warfare. Earth taught us to be. But they're wrong about what drives us. We don't seek violence. We seek justice. We don't want to conquer. We want to protect. The same instincts that made us survivors on a dangerous world now make us defenders of the weak. He gestured to the Velkan worlds below. Look at these cities. Look at these people living their lives in peace. This is what we fight for. Not territory. Not resources. Not power. We fight so that others can live free from fear and oppression. That's the true strength of humanity. Not our weapons or our ships, but our refusal to stand by while others suffer. The ceremony continued for another hour, with speeches from Velkan leaders and representatives of all 4 species in the Confederacy. There were gifts exchanged and formal treaties signed establishing a permanent alliance between Earth and the Velkan worlds. There were songs sung in alien languages and human languages, a blending of cultures that marked the beginning of a true friendship. Finally, it was time to